Your reaction to the news that Donald Trump has been convicted by a jury in New York of 34 counts of falsifying documents. The former US president, of course, running to be president once again, due to be sentenced on the 11th of July. A custodial sentence, a possibility, albeit perhaps an unlikely one. Let's talk to Scottie Nell Hughes, US political commentator and journalist based in Nashville, Tennessee. Scottie, thank you for joining us tonight. Your response, if you would, to this verdict. Good evening.
Well, considering your intro that you cannot figure out how the MAGA call can still follow this, let me just correct you on a couple of points.
That was one of our listeners, Scottie.
Okay, I would hope that would not be yours, because here's the deal. What this happened today, and this is a very sad day for the American court system. I mean, it was already embarrassing watching this whole sham trial that, by the way, we weren't even able to have cameras in there to document what was truly happening. But it was a very sad, not only the whole entire trial, it set us back. It definitely broke the rule of law in America today. But what you are seeing is the political targeting by one party after someone who potentially could be who is their opponent. And if anybody, while I am shocked, I'm not surprised at this guilty conviction on all charges. And I think that it is one of those that you have to look at why all of a sudden, after this should have been a misdemeanor, that we only found out why it was a felony today. And as your previous guest pointed out, I thought this was very accurate. They point out that this was not a federal offense because the federal government actually passed on it. They didn't think that this was a federal offense. An election crime was not committed. Federal election crime. This was a New York attorney general who had obvious ties. The Democratic Party wants to rise in the ladder, and he set this up to have
Scottie,
the exact
a jury listens to all the evidence and unanimously agreed that Donald Trump was guilty.
Well, let's go back to what this jury was. First of all, this jury was not necessarily of his peers. These were the questions. Even in the selection of the jury, we already knew that there was going to be a bias put in there. It was already being told basically that you could not be a Trump supporter, but you also could not be against Biden. You could not be against the Democrats. And the line of questioning they used, it was obvious this was going to pull people that already had a bias against Donald Trump.
All 12 of those jurors are corrupt.
Absolutely. It's not hard to find 12 people who do not like Donald Trump in New York City. Now, the rest of the state we can talk about, but definitely in 12. But then let's look at the judge himself, 55 pages of instruction to the jurors that he would not even let the jurors have the 55 pages on what he wanted to instruct. In fact, he came back and he said, you find him guilty, not necessarily on what he's been on trial for, but just if you feel like he's guilty of committing some crime, then vote guilty. His instructions were nowhere near what had been allowed. In fact, he purposely, I believe, set this up knowing it was going to go to an appeals court. And we are going to see this appeal after appeal after appeal. And don't make a mistake that the reason why that this judge, it makes it even more politically motivated. The judge set this trial, or for his sentencing trial,
but Scottie, what you're saying is huge. You are making a huge claim here, which is that the United States of America is no longer a democracy. That's what you're alleging.
When you look at the outcome of today, and if you are in the New York State trial system, absolutely it is not.
Why do you trust Donald Trump so much?
It's not that I trust Donald Trump. I trusted our law system. And in this case, what this judge did is absolutely make it a mockery. And what this attorney general did, used our justice system to take out a political opponent. And that is not what America was founded for.
There's two possibilities here, aren't there? There's the possibility that the United States of America's justice system is entirely corrupt, on the one hand, or there's the possibility that Donald Trump lied. And you think the first is more likely than the second?
Well, but what did he do that he lied about that is worth a felony? Nothing was a felony. A misdemeanor. Even let's just say that he personally changed the business records to cover up the $130,000, which, by the way, in Michael Cohen's testimony, he admitted that he did without Donald Trump's
But is your point that he didn't do what he's accused of, or that it doesn't matter?
Well, I'm saying he might have done what he was accused of, but once again, it wasn't a crime. Nothing Donald Trump did was a crime.
So he might have falsified formal electoral records, but that doesn't matter.
If you think, first of all, he was on trial for federal election charges. What he was on trial for was that he broke election rules in this country.
By falsifying
and that's not what he's
documents.
convicted of. But if you think that Donald Trump, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization that also was at this point, he was president of the United States, running for president of the United States, front runner of the Republican Party, literally went into the accounting office and signed checks and erased and put in something else. I've got a bridge in New York to sell you for $5. Michael Cohen himself admitted that he was the one who did the check to Stormy Daniels. He was the one that paid her off. And by the way, that was not an admission of guilt that anything ever happened. That's the whole point in all this. The truth about why he was on trial has nothing to do with what this guilty verdict comes out.
Do you think Donald Trump is a liar?
I think that Donald Trump is a businessman. And I think in this case... that this was nothing. I think that how do I say this? You're a politician. You're a narcissist. I think unfortunately, every politician, whether you're in the UK or here in the US, lies, unfortunately, to get into their position.
So he's a narcissistic liar, and that doesn't worry you for someone who is about potentially to become, once again, the most powerful person in the world.
But so is Joe Biden. So is Bill Clinton. So is George W. Bush. So is every president. And let's go down the list of congressmen. Let's go all the way to our local aldermen and county commissioners. Unfortunately, they lie to get into office. In this case, however, I don't think Donald Trump lied. Now, I think when Trump got involved with this, it wasn't. By the way, if he truly did have an affair with Stormy Daniels, which even Stormy admits didn't happen. In fact, she signed off saying it never happened. It would have been worth a lot more than $130,000 to cover up. True or false? Especially when you're talking about a man of his means. So once again, that's not what he was on trial for here, though. That's the thing. You have seen them take 34 counts. When you were bringing up a stripper and having her describe all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the actual accusations, and you don't find out the felony charge until the closing arguments, you have to call this for what it is. And this, thanks to the Democrats, Donald Trump was just elected again in November.
Do you reckon? You reckon this makes it far more likely that Donald Trump will win the re-election?
Absolutely. Why? I think this right here helped him on that side.
But Scottie, what message does that? What message would America be sending to the rest of the world by electing a convicted felon as president?
A man that was targeted by his political opponents. I mean, this is the kind of things that you hear about in third world countries. But that's not what the world will see, will it? The world will see your country electing a criminal to your highest office. We already have one in office right now named Joe Biden.
He's not a convicted criminal.
Well,
the difference is pretty major. Joe Biden has not been convicted of anything, and Donald Trump has. That's pretty major.
But if you look at who actually is the one doing the convicting, then you see why Donald Trump never had a chance. He never was given.
But do you not worry about the reputation of your country in the eyes of the rest of the world if you re-elect a convicted felon?
I worry about how the rest of the world should be looking about it. If you keep Joe Biden in office, we're going to find ourselves in World War III, considering his foreign policy has been abysmal in the Ukraine and the Middle East. Donald Trump comes in, and you might actually have a chance of peace and not sending our sons and daughters off to war. So, yes, you want to talk about what the rest of the world's seeing, whether you want someone who they say is a convicted felon, a title put on him by a very biased judge.
But the rest of the world, with respect, sees a country that has gone mad.
Oh, I can absolutely believe they see a country that's gone mad over the past 3 years under the Biden administration. And they know now the extent that this administration will do to keep their political opponent from actually being on the ballot in November. And that's exactly what this whole thing has been about.
Scottie, thank you so much for coming on.